Hello everybody, welcome to the stream. I'm back. Yes, I'm back in the country and back to work. So we're gonna record a podcast tonight. I'm early for once. I want to do this at 8. I'm early. This usually never happens. I could have waited, to go on the stream, but I've had a very long day and a very busy day, and I'm kind of afraid that I'll fall asleep or something. So I wanted to get it out of the way. Maybe I'll balance out the times when I was too early. So we're gonna record a Private Citizen episode tonight, of course, on the German federal election, because I kind of promised to do that. Might as well get it out of the way. Hope it will be interesting. Thanks, Trey, for the follow. That's nice. As usual, ground rules. Recording podcast. That means I won't interact that much with Twitch. I'll, live feedback as it comes in and pertains to the show. I'll try to get it in. Not chatting with chat, talking to chat as much as usual. But if you've been here before, you know the drill. I just want to reiterate it also, that the alerts are muted and everything. If you're more into gaming, I'll do a gaming stream on Saturday and Sunday. I'll actually be participating in the Icarus beta weekends. I asked them for a key because I'm writing a review, and I got one, and so I have to play it anyway. So I might as well stream it. I thought. If you're not aware, Icarus is a kind of a survival game. It's a bit like, I would say, a cross between Valheim and, I don't know, a little bit Escape from Tarkov. It's kind of survival. It'll have guns later. The stuff I've seen in the previous weekends, they didn't have guns yet. So you go to, you're in orbit of a planet and you do raid style. You go down and you build, Valheim style, you build a house or whatever and try to survive the elements and you have a goal. You need to mine certain elements or whatever. In that time, I don't really know how it works. I just watch some people play it, so it'll be interesting. I'll be doing that on the weekend, both days from about noon, if I can get that done. But let's just go ahead and start this recording. Let's see if first everything works. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That looks good. That works. I mean, I didn't change the setup from before I left when I recorded the last episode, but better safe than sorry. First, with audio everything works. Stuff. 1, 2, 3. In any operating system. 1, 2, 3. That looks good. Yeah. Okay, that works. Let's see if I can still remember how to do this. It's been more than 2 weeks. It's not good. Oh, yes. Give me that sweet caffeine. Tea in this case, I guess. To not fall asleep. Hello, super user. Looking sharp. Yes, I was. I was doing. One of the things I did today was hosting a webinar. And, there's not really, it was like an admin webinar, so there wasn't really a dress code. I got Starbucks, so now this is Earl Grey. This is I just used this cup because I like it very much. I stole it in Starbucks, I think in Vienna. I don't know. Must have been almost 20 years ago. I just love this mug because I just love the way, how big it is and whatever. But anyway, I was doing a webinar. There wasn't really a dress code, but I think if I do a webinar, I kind of want to look like, the host. I feel like I'm on TV, so I kind of want to dress like I'm on TV. Also, I feel like dressing up again. I'm in a suit phase. I got a new tie, so that's good. Anyway, that's why I didn't change. I thought this is appropriate because today we're talking about elections, and I kind of look like either Glenn Greenwald when he does one of his videos, or like an election commentator. And now we're going to Paul. In Berlin. Hello, Paul. How are you doing? Was it Uli aus Deppendorf? There used to be a guy whose last name was Deppendorf. We always did the polling data, And a Depp means a dumbass. So a Dorf means village. So his last name was basically Dumbass Village. And there was a parody once. I don't know. It must have been some parody show where they call his name. I think was Ulrich Deppendorf, and they called him Ulrich aus Deppendorf. So they called him Uli from Dumbass Village. That always gets into my mind. Anyway, let's not. That doesn't mean anything to you if you're not from Germany, probably. Let's do this shit. Let's see if I can do this shit. Let's let's crack straight into it, as Pestly says. Right, here we go. How does this work again? You're listening to The Private Citizen, episode 88, for Wednesday, the 6th of October, 2021. Jamaican traffic lights. Hello everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Fab. I'm coming to you live from Düsseldorf, the capital of the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany. Yeah, where today we're going to talk about the federal election that happened while I was away. I promised that. I might as well just get it out of the way. It's kind of topical. There was lots of coverage of this outside of Germany, so I thought we'll do that. I'm going to have to explain, because chances are you're not from Germany, I'm going to have to explain our party, our parliamentary system, our parties, how the coalition works and everything. So, if you're from Germany, you might be, you might know all of this, but you might learn something. And if you're from outside of Germany, it helps to look over the fence once in a while. So let's talk about how we do this stuff in Germany. It's nice for you to be here. I'm happy about that. It's cool. I'm happy to be back to regularly podcasting. Sorry for running away there for a while. Actually, maybe I should talk about what I did, because I don't think I did that beforehand so much. But basically, I spent between more than 2 weeks in Spain, and I was working actually pretty much in the morning. So I was in near Alicante, a town called San Juan, and I spent working in the morning. I wrote stories, did some other stuff, and then in the afternoon I walked to the beach and spent a lot of time at the Chiringuito. That's the Spanish word I learned, which is really cool. Chiringuito, it's the beach bar. And had some beers. Went swimming. It was lovely down there. It was like 30 degrees. It's amazing. And I also worked on my novel a little bit on the side. So very, very cool. I was very happy I got that opportunity to do that. But now I'm back, and I'm back home in Germany, where it's getting cold. It's very rainy here, but that's the way it goes. And obviously, while I was gone, the federal election happened. I mean, I did vote. I voted by mail. I've been doing this for like 20 years anyway. So that's the topic we're gonna talk about in a little bit. But before we get into that, another thing I wanted to mention, there was something I came across yesterday, which is basically this Facebook whistleblower issue. There's this woman called Frances Haugen. She's like a whistleblower from Facebook, and it's in the news. And I would have usually covered that in this episode because it's kind of topical. But, I thought the federal election thing was more important, so I wanted to get that out of the way. I will cover this Frances Haugen story. I plan to cover it soon. But if you don't want to wait, because it's kind of a hot topic, I did wrote a newsletter about that today. I wrote an article about this in my newsletter, which is called Edge Runner Magazine, at edgerunnermag.com. There's a link in the show notes. Private Citizen Press is the website you can go to if you never listened to the show. That's where all the show notes are, and there's a lot of show notes usually. Tinto Verano, says Super User. It's the best. I'm guessing that's red wine. I mean, vino tinto is red. My Spanish is so bad. Anyway, so that was Super User, who's coming in live on Twitch. I'm obviously, as usual, broadcasting this live on Twitch while I'm recording. Where was I? I was going to drink some Earl Grey hot. Right, so you can read that in the newsletter if you want it now, but I'm gonna cover it on the show. Tinto de Verano means just drink of the summer. Don't think it's wine based. It's very sweet. I drank a lot of vermouth while I was. I mean, I like vermouth, but usually in like cocktails. And it turns out the Spanish drink it like they have different vermouth as well. Like the normal martini you would put in a vodka martini or something like this. And I just drink that with ice. I enjoyed that a lot. And the fucking ham. I mean, the ham down there. Jesus Christ. It's divine. Or the food anyway. The food is just amazing. I mean, the tapas are just... I mean, I knew this. I've been to Spain before, but I was just... The problem is they start eating like very late. Like the restaurants open at 9 in the afternoon. I had to get used to that, and now I'm on that rhythm. So I'm like, jamon is a hell of a drug. Yeah, it is. So actually, I lost like 4 kilos while I was down there. I have no idea how I did this. I'm guessing I had about a 3.5 kilometer walk to the beach, and it was very warm. So I walked walked 7 kilometers every day, pretty much, with like a backpack and stuff. So maybe that helped. Yeah, the expectation is siesta. Yeah, they do the siesta thing, which I can't do. I can't do naps, really. So if I'm going to have a nap in the afternoon, I'm just going to be destroyed for the rest of the day. I can't really do that. I need to power through the days. That's really not my thing. But anyway, let's get into the topic we're here for. Let's talk about Germany, not Spain. Let's talk about the Bundestag. The Bundestagswahl 2021, as we say in Germany. And I'm going to use the news bump for that because somehow it feels appropriate. But, we're not going to start with news. Before I get into this, I feel like I have to explain I'm going to do a quick explainer of the German parties, their colors. They have all these specific colors that they used for, like in the poll charts, which that gives the coalitions their names, right? We have this very specific. We often always have a coalition government in Germany. It's not like the UK or like in the US, and that's why you kind of need to know the colors. What I'm not going to explain is how this election worked because it's very specific. There are 2 votes. There's like a countrywide vote and one for your local, and that both like involves like or that changes the composition of the Bundestag. So the Bundestag is our parliament. The Reichstag is the building. It used to be called. It's confusing. The parliament under back in Bismarck's days. So that's your time to Bismarck there. Is about, what is this, 7 minutes or something? I don't know. Under Bismarck's day, the parliament was called Reichstag. The building was called Reichstag too. Now, the building is only called Reichstag, and the parliament is called the Bundestag, because we don't have an empire, a Reich anymore. But like, it's a very specific voting system, but it really doesn't, it's very complicated, and it doesn't really help you, to know that. We're just going to gloss over that and how exactly the seats are filled and how it all works. Basically, what we do in Germany is we vote for the party, right? The party has a candidate, and the party that gets the most votes gets the most seats, and that candidate will become chancellor. So for the SPD, the Social Democratic Party, which has the most votes this election, the candidate was Olaf Scholz, my former mayor from Hamburg when I was living in Hamburg. And so if he manages to build a government coalition, then he will be chancellor. Now, Armin Laschet, who is the candidate for the Conservatives, the CDU, he could also become chancellor, but I'm going to get into that later. But, that's really all you kind of need to know. Let's not worry about how the specific votes work. I mean, I could talk about this. I actually study politics, but it's confusing even to me, and it doesn't really help you. It doesn't even help you when you live in Germany, really. Like, you just like it gets too tactical. There's like some theories like with tactical voting, and it really doesn't work. So let's talk about the parties. So I'm gonna go through these. This is kind of like the historical order that came up, or that usually used to be like how they got their votes. So there is the first party we're going to talk about. Their color is black. They're the CDU, CSU, CDU, CSU, the Christlich-Demokratische Union, and the Christlich-Soziale Union. Together they're usually called die Union, the Union. This is very specific because all parties in Germany, all other parties, they're all the same in all the federal states and on the federal level. Now, with the Conservatives, this is not the case. They have a party for all of Germany, the CDU, that's for all of Germany, and then there's one for Bavaria, because the fucking Bavarians, they always need to be special. They're kind of like the Texas of Germany. They're always a bit, I don't want to say seditious, but you know what I mean. They're special. So they have so they don't have the Christian Democratic Union, they have the Christian Social Union. But for all intents and purposes, they're one party. Now the CDU's color is black. The CSU color is dark blue generally, but usually those are put together. On the seating chart of the Bundestag that I have in the show notes, Private Citizen or Press, and that I will talk about later. They're actually shown in dark blue. But, for all intents and purposes, they're one party. They have one list for, the national list, and they have one. They always need to figure out which party will be the candidate, right? This time was Armin Laschet, who's from North Rhine-Westphalia, so my federal state, so he's a CDU guy. Back in the day, there was Edmund Stoiber, he used to be from the CSU. So there was sort that out. But, all intents and purposes, CDU, CSU are one party. Then we have the SPD, the Red Party, the Social Democrats, the Sozialdemokratische Partei Deutschlands, the oldest still existing party. They're Labour Party, basically. That's what they are. There's not that much to say about them. It's pretty comparable to the Labour Party in the UK, I would say. Then we have the Yellow Party, which is the FDP, which is a bit weird probably when you're from UK or more from the US, where yellow is like is not a very nice. Usually, being yellow, you're yellow means you're a coward. I don't think these guys are cowards, although some people would maybe argue. So the FDP, die Freie Demokratische Partei, they're the liberals. Their sub-slogan is also the liberals. Like many modern liberals, they're not that liberal in a classical sense, but then we have the Green Party. They're green. The Greens. They're basically the Greens. They were founded, in the 80s. And have been on the rise ever since. Then we have the Purple Party, Die Linke, or the left. Die Linke means the left. They are the descendant of the Eastern, Eastern Germany, the DDR, Deutsche Demokratische Republik, was a socialist state, beholden to the Soviets. And they weren't a democracy. They were a one-party system. They had one party, the SED. Now, the left is basically a descendant of the SED. So there was a party that was a descendant of the SED. Then there was a left party in West Germany. And through several mergers, they ended up being the left. The idea being that the Social Democrats, the SPD, the Red Party, is usually was historically considered a left party. Now they went center a lot. They went closer and closer to the CDU, to the Conservatives. So the real left, basically, in Germany said, we need our own party. There's many. These are the big parties, right? There are many, many, many other parties. which I'm going to talk about quickly at the end of this, because lots of people ask me who I voted, and I didn't vote, spoiler alert, didn't vote for any of these that I'm talking about now. But, there's the MLPD, the Marxist-Leninist Party of Germany, there are many other parties. But, generally the left saying, the SPD is not left enough, so we're the real left, basically. And then the newest party in the bunch, they're blue, light blue is your, you'd also maybe say the AfD, die Alternative für Deutschland. Often, especially by the left, called the Nazis, which, is not fair because there's some actual neo-Nazi parties in Germany, the NPD, for example. Then they're never in the federal parliament. But, I would say these are the Eurosceptics, right? They're a bit like, what was the party in the UK? UKIP. Yeah, it's kind of the same idea. They would like to get us out of the euro. They would like to, get the Deutsche Mark back. Germany being more independent, whatever. They're somewhat immigration unfriendly, I would say. This is why many very progressive and left people usually call them the Nazis, which to me, somebody who studied politics and history for, I didn't get a degree, but I spent years and years in university reading a lot of things and listening to a lot of professors. And, the funny thing, and we did a lot I did a lot on the Third Reich, of course. Well, of course, obvious topic, but I was very interested in it as well. Now, the Nazis, the NSDAP, the National Socialist Party back in the day, Hitler's party, they weren't concerned with immigration. Nobody back then was concerned with immigration. You could call them racist, although that's a problematic term for reasons I'm not going to go into. But, I would call they were xenophobic. And the AfD is a little bit xenophobic as well, I would say. And that's why they're against immigration. But funnily enough, the Nazis obviously were never against immigration because, surprise, immigration in Germany before the Second World War wasn't a thing. Germany was fucked, right? Germany was poor. Our economy was fucked after World War I. We had to pay reparations. The country was utterly fucked, which is actually why the Nazis got to power. But it's also why really nobody, like Hitler, immigrated to Germany from Austria. But he was like crazy, right? He was like the only guy. There wasn't much immigration going on because the country was in shambles. So that's always, there was a lot of inflation. My grandma still has, my grandma who turned 100 last month, still has like the 1 billion mark, Reichsmark, notes. It's like, where you could buy like a bread roll with that if you were lucky. Super user says, so I'm going to go into some live feedback from Twitch because I think this is important. Fab, I distinctly remember you being much harder on the AfD while you were doing Linux Outlaws, basically comparing to Nazis at the time. What changed? Well, I'm hard on them. I would, of course, never vote for them. I don't like their positions. I'm a very immigration-friendly guy. I come from a town in Germany which is famous or infamous, where I'm from. It's basically, that's what the AfD says, it's horrible. I'm from a very close to Duisburg-Marxloh, which is a very famous suburb, where everybody says, oh, it's horrible. It's like the Bronx of Germany, is like all these gangs roam, which is all bullshit. Like we had a lot of Turkish immigrants where I grew up, of course, which meant I could get excellent doner kebab at all times. Lots of Italian immigrants, of course. I'm completely immigration friendly. I'm hard on them. What has changed is that as with maybe my opinion changed. I've gone obviously become a lot more conservative over times, since Linux Outlaws times as well. But like I also feel the hyperbole and the political climate has changed, where like the left or people who are left aligned will use these terms to vilify the other side. And I have to say, just to be fair, I'm not a fan of the AfD and of their people, but we talked a lot about the coronavirus legislation that happened and the change to the IFSG Infektionsschutzgesetz. And the only two parties in the parliament at the time that were against this were the FDP and the AfD. And there were two speeches, one by Christian Lindner from the FDP, who is their chancellor candidate, and one of, what's his first name? I always fucking Gauland, Alexander Gauland, who is like, he has an actual fucking Nazi name, you know. He's an old guy and he's an idiot. And above everything else, he has a Nazi name, because Gau in Nazi Germany was kind of like the county, I guess. But anyway, so he's an asshole. But he gave a better speech than Lindner. He was the only parliamentarian in that debate who gave a reasonable speech about this legislation. Like, literally. I watched the whole thing. Like, you know, the CDU was horrible. The woman from the SPD, which is actually from my old constituency in Duisburg, she was idiotic. She was just like not making any sense. The Greens were horrible as usual. I mean, it was a clusterfuck. And like Gauland was the only guy, even though I fucking hate him, who gave a good speech. And sometimes you have to recognize that. For example, there was a left politician. So I'm not a friend of the left. I don't. You know, the left in Germany is the only party who is a direct descendant of a non-democratic party, and they had people from a non-democratic party in parliament, and I'm not a friend of that. So if there's any, like, you know, they weren't fascists because they were, like, you know, there was a socialist state, but they're totalitarian. So the only totalitarian politicians that were ever, like, okay, in the very early stages of the Bundestag, there were actually some people who were previously actual Nazis, members of the NSDAP. But, you know, in the last, let's say, 30 years, the only people who were actually, you know, members of a totalitarian regime in the German parliament were from the left party. But anyway, they had a politician, Gregor Gysi, who I didn't like any of his policies, but he was an amazing speaker. Like, his speeches were amazing. He was like the best. His rhetoric was like the best. So, you know, I don't know. I just like to be fair and balanced. And I think the AfD, I would never vote for them. Their policies are not my policies at all. Aside from this one thing on the coronavirus thing, I've never agreed with anything any of their politicians have ever said. But, you know, they're not Nazis. Like, you know, if you want to stay in a historically correct and politically correct terminology, which is what I do, that is my thing, that's why I'm doing this show, then they're not Nazis. Like, they're neither Nazis as in, are they members of the NSDAP? Were they members of the NSDAP? No. So they're historically not Nazis. They don't espouse the same policies as the Nazis. I mean, yes, of course, there might be some of their parliamentarians or members of the party who are anti-Semite, right? But, you know, you had that in the Pirate Party. You know, probably in the with the Conservatives. It's not really like, you know, but the party itself, like, its program is certainly not that. And they're not neo-Nazis. Like the NPD, they are neo-Nazis. They're walking around this, you know, bald-headed fucking boots, waving flags, you know, marching with torches, shit like that. They're neo-Nazis. The AfD is not that. Now, I'm not saying that is better, right? Because I don't like their policies, and I actually think they're more dangerous because they're actually they're obviously working within the political system to try to further some means that I don't like and that I think are not good for a country. But that's what they're doing. They're within the political system, right? They're not Nazis. They're not trying to overthrow the system. They're not under the definition of the German constitution, you know, opposed to the constitution. Otherwise, you know, they wouldn't be in the Bundestag. You know, the party would have actually be outlawed, which is hard. You know, even the NPD isn't outlawed, and they're basically arguably working, you know, they actually said they want to overthrow the way our governmental system works. But anyway, Super User says AfD are very pro-free speech, which also aligns with your views, but history shows us they quickly change their opinion when in power. Well, but all parties do that. It depends on. If I could tell you, historically I voted for the SPD a lot, and I could just sit here for 2 hours and just tell you where I feel betrayed by the SPD, where they basically changed everything they stood for when they got into power, especially in the Grand Coalition that we're going to talk about later a little bit. Talk about what that is, we just don't know, right? And we have what I believe in. That's what studying politics has gotten me. I believe in the German parliamentary system. We have very strict laws about these things, like our constitution, our Grundgesetz, our whole political system was built in full view of what the Nazis did to the Weimar Republic. And I think it has worked. It's been here for 50 years. We've had neo-Nazis, we've had actual Nazis, and I just, I'm a misanthrope at heart. I think people are shit, right? I think generally, lupus? Oh God, how does it go? Lupus. How did? Oh God, I always forget this. Now I have to Google something. I can. Homo homini lupus. So the humans are wolves, right, to themselves. So I don't trust people, especially individually. But I think we've built a state and a system that works, and I think people are more intelligent than generally the press, and especially the progressive press gives them credit for. If you read that newsletter article I talked about that I also wrote today, it's about against censorship, Facebook, and I think that politicians from the left side of the aisle in recent times have this tendency to just be to think that people can't decide for themselves and that they're all stupid, and they're very I can't find words today. Now I have to Google this word. Patronizing. They're very patronizing towards voters. So I generally, I don't know. I feel, I certainly don't want to say the AfD are dangerous, right? But, so is the left, I feel. They're as dangerous, and especially like the MLPD, the left always goes on about how bad the AfD is, right? But they're saying, and what they're doing is they're working within the political system. The MLPD, the Marxist-Leninist Party, had campaign advertising on my street that said we need a revolution, and that said that the criminal code, the article of the criminal code in Germany that says that a revolution against the state is illegal should be revoked, right? So the Grundgesetz, our constitution, says that, has very strict rules against people who are undermining the democratic system. And if you're calling for a revolution, you're by definition doing that. A revolution, by definition, is the violent or forceful overthrow of a government, right? So these people, they are also dangerous, but nobody ever talks about that. And I think we just need to. I'm just trying to be balanced. Obviously, a lot of this. I mean, it's a political episode, right? It's a generally political show, but obviously, this is all my opinion. Privatecitizen.press. There's a contact link on there. Please, if you as people are doing on Twitch right now, which I think is great. If you have different opinions, please let me know, and I will hear them. I will read them out on the show. I am not against, giving voices to other opinions. And, if you want to come on the show and discuss this with me, please get in contact. If it makes for a good discussion, I will do that. Anyway, you now know the colors of the parties. And this is where we get the coalitions from that are currently being talked about. So there's two probable coalitions for this election result. We'll get into the results later, but you maybe read about these. So these are the first possible one would be the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP. So the colors are red, green, yellow. In Germany we call this eine Ampelkoalition. meaning a traffic light coalition, because, if you switch it around, if you do red, yellow, green, it's like a traffic light. And the other possible coalition would be the CDU-CSU, so the Union, the Conservatives, the Greens, and the FDP. And that would be black, green, yellow. And that's the so-called Jamaica coalition or Jamaican coalition, because these are the colors of the Jamaican flag. So as you can tell, we are very creative with these things in Germany. So other historic coalitions that happened in the past, which are not possible with this result, the Grand Coalition technically I think would be, but both parties have said they don't want that this time, because it's been years in the Grand Coalition. They don't, and they would basically have to argue who becomes Chancellor, Laschet or Steinbrück, and that would just fall apart because their egos are too big. But the Grand Coalition is traditionally a coalition between the SPD and the Conservatives. So the Labour and Conservatives, so red and black, that's the Grand Coalition because they're the two biggest parties. Another historic coalition, the one that formed the first government in Germany, was the Schwarz-Gelbe Koalition. That means black-yellow coalition, which is the CDU, CSU, and, it's actually, my show notes are wrong, and the FDP. Wait, I have to fix this because I will forget this, and then that is not good. Where are we? Schwarz-Gelbe Koalition, which is CDU, CSU. Live behind the scenes here. Yeah, so this CDU, CSU, FDP coalition is the black-yellow coalition. Then we have the red-green coalition, which I actually traditionally really liked. That that was the Schröder government one, which was the SPD and the Greens, so Labour and the Greens, Rot-Grüne Koalition, the red-green coalition. I always thought that worked really well because it kind of balanced. They balanced each other. I think the Greens generally, I don't like a lot of their policies. They're generally a bit crazy and tend to not know what they're talking about, even more than other politicians, if that's even possible. But they have good policies. Like basically under Schröder, Germany was leading in renewable energies. This is like 98, I think. We're like building lots of wind farms and stuff. And the irony of history is, of course, that Merkel scrapped all that. There were big state subsidies for building, or actually for companies who built solar power plants or solar panels and wind farms. And when Merkel scrapped that, a lot of that stuff went away. But I thought that always worked well because the SPD balanced the Greens a bit, and the Greens kicked the SPD in the butt a little bit for like renewable energies and looking after the environment, which I always thought was good. And then there's another historic coalition, which is not going to happen this time either, which is the Rot-Rote Koalition, the Red-Red Coalition, which is the SPD and the left. Well, I say historic, it's never happened because of realities of, it's never happened on the federal state level, of course. And there's also parliaments in the federal states, and they had other coalitions. And this happened, I think, in Berlin and like in the east of Germany. Several times, but never on the national level. But it's kind of a no-brainer because it's kind of the left parties, right? If they had enough votes, they could have a leftist government. Actually, it'd be interesting to see that because I think it's the same thing with the red-green. I think the CDU would the SPD would balance the slightly more crazy. We want socialism tendencies of the left. So now you know the colors, you know the possible coalitions. And I thought I'm going to now talk a little bit about, why do we have coalitions in Germany? Like what is this weird system? And I feel like this is where, looking over the fence a little bit at other countries is interesting. And why maybe if you're not from Germany, this could be interesting to you as well, this whole topic, because chances are, if you're listening to this, you are in a democratic state. But all democratic states are different from each other, and parliaments are different from each other, and there's a distinct culture, which is sometimes very, very visible. For example, in the UK, they're shouting at each other in parliament. If you're watching that as a German, you go like, "What the fuck is that? That's not civilized democracy, right? Aren't they supposed to be civilized over there? Didn't they invent civilization?" And they always say that, and that's an obvious sign. But also like how governments are formed, how decisions are made, like the interplay between a government and the parliament and the different chambers of the house and all of that, which is obviously very specific to the US, for example, or, also specific to the UK, where you have the House of Lords, which is lots of this is very historically influenced, but some of this is also a distinct, it's a culture. And obviously that grows out of historic reasons, but like in Germany, the German parliamentary culture has always been one of coalitions. And before we even had the Federal Republic, in the Weimar Republic, and before that, in the Reichstag, in the Second German Reich, so the one founded by Bismarck in 1871, they had a parliament, and they had a somewhat of a democracy. It's not a modern democracy. They had a very, very advanced and very progressive way of voting the parliament for the time. Also, very, very progressive rights, who could vote and stuff like that. But the parliament itself just didn't have that much power. It had a key power, which was every year it had to ratify the government budget, and they could actually forced Bismarck, for example, to do a lot of things with that. But it wasn't like a modern democracy where like the parliament, the party, gets together cabinet and creates the government, and there wasn't a separation of powers as we have it today. But that's where the culture comes from, the parliamentary culture. And the same thing with the British Parliament. Before that was a modern democracy, right? When that was still much more under the control of the king. Still they had a parliament, and that's where that culture comes from. And obviously the parliamentary culture in the US, I'm not an expert on this, I never did that much on it in politics or history, but it's obviously also very, very, very influenced by its early history, right? Super user says two constants in Fab shows Bismarck and Hitler. Well, they go together. That's if you I feel if you understand Bismarck and Hitler, you basically understand German history. If you learn about both of that, at least modern history, those are the keys, I feel. But of course, the Weimar Republic was an actual democracy. It was very much a democracy. It just had some key flaws, right? Really not that much in like the parliamentary system or in the how it was voted, because the Nazis came to power, they were voted in legitimately. It was a legitimate vote, and obviously there were problems around the election a lot back then, with like thugs going around beating people up if they voted for the wrong team, which wasn't only the Nazis, the communists basically started. They were first. That whole part of it was fucked of the system, but that was not so much the problem. You could argue, and it's been argued very decisively, that the majority of the German population, for whatever reason, basically because the country was fucked, actually wanted the Nazis in power. Now the problem came after that. There wasn't enough. Basically, what the Nazis did is to gloss this over and make it very easy, maybe not completely correct in a political science sense or a historic science sense, but basically what they did is they used emergency laws. COVID. This is why I'm so critical about all this stuff, by the way, because they basically declared an emergency where there wasn't one, and then used emergency laws to destroy the democracy. Right, and to assume absolute power and to keep it. But, that wasn't really, they basically had, one of the first things they did was disband the parliament. Because the parliament, or, outlaw all the parties except theirs, basically. because the parliament actually was a problem for them, because the parliamentary system was very democratic and had a very democratic culture. And that's where this coalition stuff comes from. Ever since that, Germany's never been a country where one party, never in the history of Germany really, when it was a democracy, aside from the totalitarian bits. And maybe because of that, especially afterwards, we're very, very suspicious of one party government, I think. That's rooted deep within the German psyche, I feel, with most people even not knowing it. And so also, we never had like a two-party system. I mean, the US is very much a two-party system. There are, of course there are more parties, but, the only parties you can get in power are one of two parties. And the UK pretty much is like that as well. So we always had a lot of parties. And you have to understand how this kind of works under Bismarck, because I think that was a good thing. So when this election happened, we had a lot of coverage outside of Germany, which is understandable to me because maybe some of the correspondents don't understand this German history, but also inside of Germany, which I found scary, but because that means that political journalists in Germany don't understand this history as well. So there was a lot of reporting where basically they went, oh, this is a time of uncertainty, this is going to be horrible. There was even like some UK people who called it like the country's Brexit moment, which is idiotic, because what happened here is actually in this election we're going to talk about the result later, but it's basically the restoration of how things used to be in Germany, right? We now had Angela Merkel in power for 16 years, almost as long as Helmut Kohl, or maybe longer. I mean, she's not. It depends on how long the coalition talks last, which could be a long time, but. She had 4 governments, and 3 of those were grand coalition, and that is just not a usual thing in Germany. It's happened before, but it's generally like that's a 2-party government, and we had 2-party governments, the black-yellow coalition, for example. But that's always been like a strong part, or like red-green, right? That was like a strong partner and a minor partner. Having the 2 big parties. You'd think they headbutt a lot, but which it actually means is there is 2 parties that the most in the center and have been moving to the center a lot over the last decades. And it also means they have a huge majority in the Bundestag, right? Because they're the 2 biggest parties. And that means the government is like rock solid and has a lot of power, which I guess if you're from the UK or the US, you're like, that's a good thing. But like in Germany, we don't like our government to be that, really. I distinctly remember being at university, like this is like second semester or something, and one of my politics professors said a very smart thing. He said, at the time we were just gonna, I think it looked like we were gonna get a grand coalition, and this was after Schwarz, this was like the first Merkel grand coalition, and he said, the grand coalition is a slow death of democracy in Germany. And I think to this, he was very, very correct. He had historic reasons. He talked about the earlier grand coalitions, but I think after that, the Merkel grand coalitions even showed this even better, because you have a chancellor who's very sure in power, never getting called on anything really, and it's just, it makes for a very monolithic and government that's prone to, I don't know, wouldn't even say corruption, but like lots of issues where if you have a somewhat, if you have a situation like now where there's like lots of parties and they have to sit down, they have to form a government, they have to talk a lot, and they have to hear a lot of viewpoints, right? They have to, like, if you want to do a Jamaica coalition, right, you have to have the Liberals, the Greens, which I really like. They see, I don't think they're a left party, but they see themselves as a left party. And they're certainly not conservative, right? You have a very conservative party, the Conservatives. You have the liberal conservatives, which are more like economically liberal, and then you have the Greens, which are just like there's like lots of viewpoints, and I think it's actually good. It makes the government very accountable. Like if you look back at the history, and you look back at Bismarck, where they often had I think all the time had like a minority government even. Basically, when Bismarck wanted to get a policy passed, mostly via the budget, but he had to like go to the Reichstag and like pick people from the parties, like and get a majority together. His government didn't have a majority. He had to get a majority together to get this one issue passed, which made for a lot of compromises, I guess, but like a lot of like talking. And I think it made the government a lot more accountable. And because, if you have this coalition system and you have three parties, they are, that makes the government more accountable to the parliament, which in turn makes the parliament or the government accountable to the voters. And it's just a more fluid system. There's more give in the system, I would say, and it makes for a healthier democracy. I think there's more talking, there's more viewpoints being heard. Of course, you always can have issues like, the coronavirus pandemic, where you like basically all the parties said, the same thing. You can always have that. But, in general, I think it's a good thing. Superhero says Merkel was chancellor longer than Adenauer, which is ridiculous, and Adenauer did so much more for Germany. But that's also part of the time, right? Because he basically built Germany up. Whereas, I mean, my big problem with Merkel is that she just never did anything, because that was the safest thing. And if she did something and she missnapped, she was very smart. She is an extremely good politician. Let's not get this wrong. I don't like her, but I don't think she's dumb. She's very smart. She knows what she's doing, obviously, and she would pass the buck to if something economically happened, she would like pass the buck to her finance minister and then basically fire them. But like in a nice way, and she always got along with them. So she basically went like, okay, look, we can't risk the government, like we fucked up, so you're gonna have to step down. But I think what she did was like basically, we're gonna make this up to you. I owe you one. I think that's how it worked, but I'm not quite sure. So she was a very, very good politician, obviously. So yeah, it's just a very, you could say, a peculiar system, but that's just, our culture. Superuser says, so what's the ideal coalition? That parties which agree with each other inside or outside of the coalition, for example, Greens plus more sensible people, to have some disagreement. I don't know. I think the situation, I'm happy with the situation as it is right now. I like whatever government they get. I didn't vote for any of these people anyway. But I think this is the best for the country and the healthiest thing for the democracy. I think these like long years of grand coalition and of Merkel government have basically eroded our democracy somewhat, and the understanding of people who there's people who are like 16 now who get to vote. Who've never known another chancellor than Merkel, and under Kohl back in the day, it was exactly the same thing. We were so glad when Kohl was finally gone, and there was like some movement in there. The party I actually voted for, which is like a tiny party, actually had one of the points in their program was to change the laws so that politicians could only be in office. Like they wanted to change. So the period they're in office for right now in the Bundestag is 4 years. And I wanted to change that to 5 years. But I think make it that they could only spend 10 years in office, like in any office, right? So then they have to get back to their fucking real jobs if they have any. That's basically what it said in the program. I really like that. It was it's a good. I think that we need something like that. But I'm very happy with the situation right now. That's why I'm talking about this, because lots of the coverage was like, this is horrible. It's going to take months to find a government. Yeah, but that's how we do things here, right? This is not unusual, and you just need to look back into the history of the 70s, the 60s, the 80s, to see that, before Kohl, this was normal. And it's going to be good for everybody. It's going to be good for the voters, because they will learn how the system works again. It's going to be good for the parties because they need to refresh themselves and they need to talk to each other a lot. And we might finally get some movement. Obviously I'm not very positive about this in general. I think these parties are all, that's why I didn't vote for them. I think they're all not that good, but and not that much will change. But it's better than it was before, I feel. Super User says, I think about me talking about Merkel being a good realpolitik politician, you're describing a sociopath. Well, I mean, to be a good politician, it could be argued, I think you need to be a sociopath. Right? To do what is right in the moment for you, which is the ultimate goal of a politician. You basically have to not care about anybody else. So that's what Astro says, Astro C as well, like all the politicians. If we're being real, the US is the most successful country in the world. So, well, that depends on how you measure it, right? So, I mean, you can't really compare countries. The US is just so big. I mean, I think Germany, economically speaking, for example, Germany is damn successful for its size, right? You pick any part the size of Germany out of the US and you will be hard pressed for that to be, comparable economically. You just can't compare countries like this. It just doesn't work. Although if you scale it up, the smaller countries are always better. Like, if you took Denmark, right, and you blew up like their numbers to the size of the US, they would blow everybody out of the water. But that's because they're fucking tiny. And it's easier to run a country of 12 million people than it is to run a country of 80 million people than it is to run a country of, what's the US, 300 million people, whatever. It's just you can't just compare these things. But yeah, so I thought that I hope that gave you a little overview of a little bit of an understanding of the German system. So next time you read something about it, you're like, okay, maybe I understand now. There is I put a list in the link in the show notes, Private Citizen Press, to a list on Wikipedia of all the German governments. Where you can see all the coalitions, and you can see in the beginning it's like black, yellow. Then there was like a black kind of one for a while. There was a black red one that was the first grand coalition. Black yellow, red yellow, that was weird for a while. But I grew up with the blocks when I grew up. The end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s were like basically black, yellow. So the conservatives and the liberals against red, green, the Social Democrats and the Green Party. And then in 98, you see the first Schröder, government after Kohl being red, green. Then you have a second one. And then Merkel takes over. So with that, let's get into the actual results. Let's see what actually happened. Should have used the news bumper here. So actually, we had a turnout went up a little bit. We had 46.8 million people voting. That is 76%, which I think is a good turnout. Pretty good. So this time around, the strongest party was the Labour Party, the SPD, with 25.7%, which is like, historically, SPD, CDU always used to be over 30, or like, they'd always change a little bit. The CDU got a few less. They got 24.1%. The Greens 14.8%. The FDP 11.5%. AfD 10.3%, and the left 4.9%. Now, we have what's called a 5% Hürde the 5% hurdle, which means if you are under 5% in your, in total votes, you will not get into the parliament. So the left has 4.9. There's a caveat. There's special rules. Also, how the seats, there's like Überhangmandat and all this crap, but basically they got 5%. This is one of the things they changed from the Weimar Republic, for example. That is a system they built in largely to keep, Nazi party. Well, generally extremists out, right? They don't want to have somebody who gets like 1% have one seat, and then there's like one guy in the Bundestag who just shouts like kill all immigrants or something all the time. And that's a controversial rule. Some people want to change that. I think generally it seems to work quite well. So speaking of the seats, so the SPD last election got 153. They got an additional 53. The CDU got 246 last election. They lost 50. The Greens got 67 seats last election. They won 51. So basically the 50 seats from CDU went to the Greens. The FDP had 80 last election. They got 12 more. The AfD had 94 last election. They lost 11 seats. And the left had 69 seats. 69, dude. Last election, they lost 30. So basically the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP won. The CDU, CSU, the Conservatives, the AfD, and the left lost. Now, what is very important here is that the Greens have the best, with 14.8%. They have the highest number of votes and a percentage and seats in the history. This is a lot less than a lot of people expected, including me. I thought it was at least a passing possibility that the Greens would actually be the strongest force, and that Annalena Baerbaum would be the most likely chancellor. I think they kind of especially Frau Baerbaum torpedoed herself quite a lot. The Greens have, I don't like their policy, so I think it's fortunate. They have this fortunate tendency to just talk utter bullshit sometimes. And that often tanks their numbers, I think. So my favorite thing, this was quite a ways out of the election, this was like, I don't know, half a year ago or something. But it was it was very representative for what some of the Greens do. So when she was asked, the candidate for Chancellor, Annalena Baerbaum, in the context of, renewable energies, she was asked, so what happens, which sometimes happens, we have lots of wind power plants, for example, in the north of Germany. So sometimes there's more wind. Sometimes we can't use all that power. And she was asked, like, what we need to do, what can we do if we produce more power than we can use or we can sell to the neighboring countries? Like, where should we store the power? And she said, we'll store it in the grid. We'll store the power in the grid. Yeah, that doesn't work. But I mean, it could also be that I had a problem. Yeah, as Rosie says, it's the giant moon battery, the Nazi moon battery. We just give it to we beam it up to the moon. Elon's should have said Elon's gonna work that out for us. I've got him on speed dial. We're gonna legalize marijuana. That's the first thing we do. They actually didn't push that enough, I think. Could have gotten more votes with that. I would have, that's a green policy I support, legalizing marijuana and maybe all drugs. Worked pretty well in Portugal. Anyway, so it could have been that. Or, it could have also been that I fell into the same trap as a lot of my colleagues in the media who generally, journalists tend to be very progressive. And they tend to overestimate, and also pollsters sometimes tend to overestimate, like things like the power of the Green Party, because they're like me, They're relatively, I mean, I'm not that progressive as many other journalists, but, they're more progressive than other people. They have a university education usually. Most of them have a degree, unlike me. They live in a city, in a big city, right? And if you do that, you overestimate like the impact of like Fridays for Future, Greta Thunberg, and the Green Party, right? You see all these electric vehicles, you see people on these e-scooters riding around the whole time, and you underestimate that those cities are just like a part of Germany, and there's a lot of countryside in between. And if you're like in the US, you will know this. In the US, there's the same bias. There's a huge bias where basically California and New York are like this, pushing for policy for big cities. And then you have like the Midwest, right, in Texas, where a lot of people live. I mean, they're spread out, but generally people underestimate how many people live on the countryside. And fucking when the Greens go, oh, we're gonna get rid of all petrol cars in 10 years. They go like, what the I need a fucking tractor. There's no fucking electric tractors. Who's gonna harvest the fucking cabbage, right? How do I gonna get the cabbage into town? Stuff like that. To simplify it a little bit. But I think that's a trap a lot of people fall into, and analysts, and I might have been swept along by all their writing in thinking the same thing. So this election result's a lot more conservative than I thought. Also, a lot of people have been talking, saying the SPD is dead for a long time. I mean, they lost a lot of votes, but they're still the strongest party now. So Super User says, what about older journalists, or do they just work in corporate PR and copywriting? And no, well, some of them do. Some of the younger ones go there as well. No, I feel like, I have a limited experience, of course, but I feel like there's, they tend not to argue, right? They're just there, and they've seen the publishing industry go down the toilet in the last 20 years, and they've seen all these people being fired. And like, I have 10 years left, or like I have 5 years left. I need to make it into retirement. I need to get my retirement money. I'm just going to not get fired. I'm just going to sit here, shut up, and just write stories that aren't controversial. I feel. Of course, I'm generalizing. There are journalists who write columns, for example, that say all these things that I'm saying. I mean, I'm not genius. I didn't come up with all this. But, in general, I think, I'm generalizing, of course, but I think the majority of journalists, especially the influential ones, are like this. And then there's a lot of people who just copy the stuff the public broadcasters or the big newspapers write about. Also, if they're so progressive, you'd think they would swing the election to be more progressive than it ended up being. Well, they can't really. I mean, they're doing all they can. They're writing about stuff, but like, they can write very progressive stuff, but the people in the country, they see through that, and they'll be pissed off with that, right? And these journalists are just like 3 people, compared to like they can't, they don't actually have that many. I think they have that's the thing. I think that it's a loud minority. It's like all of the press shouting down the AfD now for like, I don't know, 4 years, 8 years, whatever, however long. And, they had, I mean, in this election, lost a lot of votes. But last election, they got a lot of votes. And then the journalists are like, where did these votes come from? It's like the same thing in the US. I talked about this on the show a lot with Trump and Biden, where they're like, when Trump won everybody, how could he, the election must have been rigged. How could that guy won? And they just didn't, they don't understand that this block of voter, and I think they don't understand how big it is. So, that's the thing. Anyway, if you go to Private Citizen or Press, I have all these results in detail, and I have a graphic of the layout of the German Bundestag. That's how they sit, like so 735 seats in all. If you see that, where that is where like the floor manager of the Bundestag basically sits, like it's some kind of like our speaker, I would say. And that's where you can see where the left, right, they actually sit. So the in case you didn't know this historical fact, the left, right, putting parties on a spectrum from left to right actually came from the first German parliament in the Reichstag, where they sat like this, where like the left sat to the left if you're looking from the podium where you're speaking, like where the speaker is as well. And the right party sat to the right. And so here you can see it starts at the left with purple. That's the left. Then the big red block. That's the Social Democrats. Then the Greens. It's pretty much the middle. And then to the right, we go to the FDP, which is liberal. And I don't think they're tending more left, but it's kind of the thing. And then you have the black block, that's the CDU. And then you actually have a dark, that's what I was talking about earlier, the dark blue block, that is the CSU. So the Bavarian conservatives. So just take that as the black and the dark blue as one. And then the light blue to the very right is the AfD. And see, one of the arguments where I actually think sometimes I feel like the left is somewhat right. Right, that's confusing. They got this right. Got this correct. Is they said they're going to sit to the right side of the CSU when they entered the Bundestag. Like they weren't forced to sit there, right? They went to the right, so they see themselves, which is realistic. They're more right than the CDU, but I don't know. Maybe they're just honest. If they were gonna, fake everybody, they're gonna sit down somewhere else. I don't know. Super user says I'm sorry, that's incorrect. It came from the tennis court parliament during the French Revolution. Okay, they were actually right and left, but the British journalist who noticed it drew it incorrectly in his dispatch. Oh, wait, I'm gonna look this up. I don't even know what you're talking about there. Maybe I'm remembering this wrong. Maybe I got taught something wrong in university. That could never happen. The surprising origins. This is Time magazine. I'm gonna trust them. This is. What are they? They're saying, okay, the story begins in France in the summer of 17. Storm of the Bastille. Okay, that's Bastille Day. Get away with your ads. One of the main issues the assembly debated was how much power the king should have, says David A. Bell, a professor of early modern France at Princeton University. Would he have the right to an absolute veto? As the debate continues, those who thought the king should have an absolute veto sat on the right of the president of the assembly, and those who thought he should not, the more radical view, sat on the left of the president of the assembly. In other words, those who wanted to hew closer to tradition were on the right, and those who want to change were on the left. That actually makes sense, if you think about it, that, the French Revolution is the origin of, modern democracy. Yeah, I know. Ancient Greece and all of that, modern democracy. Then it makes sense that it comes from that. Thanks for the correction. See, this is why doing the show on Twitch is amazing. David Bell, that's who I got it from. I've read his book, The First Total War, on the Wendy War cover to cover. It's a small world. Well, it's historical science. It's a small world. Actually, I was what was it? I was looking. Somebody recommended a book. I think it was Held der Steine. Actually, here on Twitch, was streaming. He was talking about like this German industrialist dynasty who's very little known, but they owned Warta, who did like the submarine batteries in World War II, and they were basically got very rich in the Nazi regime and were one of the only people who could convert that into the Federal Republic, right? Where they kept their money and they kept their shit and they just kept buying shit, and they own BMW now. I think they're called Quant. I think the book's called Die Quants. Wait, I'm gonna look this up. So he recommended this book, right? So this German YouTuber and streamer recommends this book. Der Aufstieg der Quants, eine deutsche Unternehmerdynastie. Actually, wait, I'm gonna have to keep these tabs open, so I'm gonna put them in the show notes as well. Private Citizen.press. Anyway, so he recommends this book. And I'm Googling it. I'm looking like on Wikipedia or whatever, and then I go to Amazon or whatever, and I find this book, and it says the author is Joachim Scholtisek, who is actually my first professor at Bonn University in history. A very cool guy. He's gotten a lot older, of course. We all got a lot older, but he was very young and dynamic at the time. And I remember distinctly his purple BMW. I think he had a 3 Series BMW that we were always fascinated with as students. They rode with that to university, like an older, like an 80s or 90s model, like an older model. Anyway, it looked very cool. He's a cool guy. So I was like, small world. But that's, his historic science for you. There's only like 5 people who can stand being a history professor. It's not a very nice job. Anyway, yeah. So what we have now, of course, more information, private citizen or press. What we have now after these results is basically 2 viable coalitions, because you need 368 out of 735 seats for an absolute majority. And that only leaves the traffic light and the Jamaica coalitions. The traffic light coalition, so SPD, Greens, FDP, would have 537 seats. Chancellor would be Olaf Scholz of the SPD. And the Jamaica coalition of the CDU, CSU, Greens, FDP would have 361 seats. Which is not technically a majority, but they could have, it's called like a Mitduldung or something. It's like they could just, probably just get the other, like they get a few parliamentarians that support the government. It wouldn't be a true minority government. That chancellor would be Armin Laschet. So that would be the CSU chancellor. So everybody thinks it's probably going to be traffic light. That's because they just have a majority. Now the other coalition, they could go for a grand coalition, which would also not be a majority, but the same thing. Like it wouldn't be a true minority government. You can basically, a minority government is if you're building a government out of your parties that are in your coalition and you do not have a majority, and then you need to, everything like Bismarck back in the day, there were minority governments, you'd have to, or in the Weimar Republic, you have to go to, with every vote, you basically have to get people on board. You could have like the thing I'm talking about is like you basically, when you build the government, you get some people from the opposition who are like, we're going to support this government, and they're going to sign up. Right, and they're going to be basically, and they're not really part of it, but so they would probably, if this was like the Jamaica coalition, they'd probably get some SPD people on board. So there's no coalitions with the AfD because all of the other parties have said ever since the AfD's in the Bundestag, they've said we're not gonna have a coalition with them, so they're always out. I don't believe it could theoretically, we could have a minority government. We had some in the past, but they've always resulted historically, at least in the Bundestag on the federal level, they've resulted from there being a coalition and that falling apart because one party walked away or some parliamentarians from a party walked away. And then you had a minority government. These tend not to last long. And I don't know. It seems likely. Super says, well, a plurality has the most votes, but not an absolute majority. Well, if you're talking government coalition, doesn't matter. Like we don't do like popular vote bullshit like they do in the US. That doesn't that's not a thing. Like that doesn't. This is the popular vote, and the vote percentage doesn't really count. All that counts is the seats, and the seats are like, there's also like, if you dig into this is the stuff I don't want to get into, but it's not completely correlating to the percentage of the vote, because there's like direct mandate. There's people who, like, if they're voted in their local election, like if you so they have a list, right? So they have a national list, but they also have people who get voted directly, right? If you're the Bundestag candidate, so my hometown of Duisburg has two, north and south, right? If you get voted there directly, that is your seat. And then there's an interplay between the national list, and it's all very, very complicated. Bottom line is only the seats count. That's like, if you're talking about the government, only the seats count. Those are the people sitting in the Bundestag, and they're the ones deciding what the government's going to be. We don't know. This is now a process that's probably going to take months to figure this out. I will keep you posted as soon as we have a government, or as soon as we don't have a government, and we'll talk about at the end of this what that might mean. But I'll keep you posted about that. Before we wrap it up, I want to get into some more. I thought what were some interesting tidbits that happened around this election as well. So first thing was scarcely reported outside of Germany. I think I found a story which isn't very good from Deutsche Welle, which is kind of used to be German government propaganda. They write a lot of stories about Germany in English. They used to be like the government sponsored broadcaster that did English language news about Germany. Well, they still do that, but now it's more news. Like for 10 years now or something, they're actually now a relatively respectable news organization. They used to be more akin to like Voice of America, which used to be owned by the CIA. It's I don't know, but that's the best thing I found. It was extensively reported on in Germany. Anyway, Deutsche Welle says the top election official in the city of Berlin stepped down from her role on Wednesday after she faced heavy criticism for chaotic polling stations during Germany's federal elections on Sunday. Some Berlin residents had to wait in long lines for up to 2 hours to make their voices heard on Sunday. Other Berlin voters were forced to wait until after 6 p.m. to cast their ballots when polling stations were supposed to have closed. You're actually not legally allowed to vote after that time. The fact that multiple elections were happening simultaneously, along with coronavirus restrictions and shortages of ballot paper, were believed to have caused the disruption. The first part is bullshit, because there's always, this year there were a lot of elections happen simultaneously, but that happens almost everywhere, or happens a lot. So I don't think that's a good excuse. A major marathon in Berlin taking place on election day also put a strain on city authorities. Yeah. You fuck that up yourself. Who plans? Okay, I'm not a fan of Berlin. I think it's a shithole. I think most people that know me know this. It's a clusterfuck. And who the fuck plans a marathon on the federal election day? Also, when you have multiple elections, because it's a Superwahljahr, as we call it, a super voting year. Idiots. You fucking idiots. Anyway, an initial probe into the election chaos by officials found problems at around 100 of the 2,257 polling centers in Berlin. The results from a full investigation into the disruption are expected next week. Yeah, so this actually leaves out, why I think it's not a good story. It also goes into some other stuff that's really not important. And it's I don't know, it feels, anyway, let's not get into that. I don't think it's a very good story. The main important part they leave out is that some people actually couldn't vote. Not only did people vote after the hour where you're not supposed to vote anymore, some people actually weren't able to cast their votes. The problem seems to be that the Wahlleiter, the woman who was and her second, also a woman, who were she was supposed to organize this, said they had enough ballot paper, they just couldn't, they printed it all, they just couldn't distribute it. Also, there were 200 different versions for some reason, because there's so many fucking elections and shit going on, and it was just a clusterfuck. Now, I don't think this was malicious. I don't think there's anybody messing with the election. I think this is the Berlin city government being absolutely overwhelmed and not knowing what they're doing. Because, hello, we need this federal election would come for like 4 years now. Like, we know what date it is for like a year ahead of time. Like, you fucking need to get this solved. But, Germans are supposed to be so efficient. Sometimes we aren't. Like, I was posting actually on Twitter because, this shit is the reason why you vote by mail, right? Because you don't want to, I don't even want to go to the fucking voting booth. But yeah, you don't want to stand there in the street for like 4 hours. Like, what the fuck? Just vote by mail. Okay, and so if people don't know, in Germany we're registered in Germany when you move, you have to mandatorily register your new place of residence 2 weeks, in the 2 weeks after you move. You legally have to do this, otherwise you can be fined, and worse things can happen. You have to go to like an office and tell them where you live, and they change your ID card and everything. So the German government knows where everybody lives. That means if an election's coming up, they send you a piece of paper that you can take on voting day into the ballot place, and you give them that, and they give you that piece of paper that has all the different people you can vote for on, that you put the cross on, right? But that piece of paper you can also put in an envelope, and you say, okay, I want to vote by mail, and you sign it, and you put it in an envelope and send it off. And it's actually that envelope. I was pissed off in Düsseldorf because for the first time, usually there's an envelope in there that is like, that you can put the thing in and send it off, and it's free. Like, you don't have to pay for it. They didn't have that fucking envelope in Düsseldorf, so I was pissed off there. But then you send that off, and then they send you that piece of paper that you get in the voting booth that you vote on, right? The paper record. And you get that, you fill that out, and there's like a system. There's like all these 3 envelopes. You put the thing in one envelope, then you put the other. Have another piece of paper. It's Germany that you need to sign in with the first envelope and the second envelope, and then you put that in the third envelope, and then you send it off, and then you vote it. Now, what cracked me up is that after I was pissed off that they didn't give me an envelope to send it back for free, which usually they do, the Düsseldorf people were so dumb. They had like the vote, like you have a piece of paper. It's like an A4 piece of paper, except it's longer. That is pre-folded, that folds up, and then you have an envelope you're supposed to put that in. And the envelope was smaller. It wasn't as wide as the fucking... Like, if you have how hard is that? If you have a fucking A4 format paper, there's A4 envelopes. Like, the envelope didn't fit. I'm like, what the fuck? We're supposed to be like this advanced, very, very efficient country. And they fucking design a voting slip that doesn't fit in the fucking envelope? But that's neither here nor there. They obviously had problems in Berlin. But that's why you vote by mail. It works. It works very well. So that's one thing that happened. Another thing that I found... another thing that I wanted to answer is because I had a lot of questions about this. Super user says, I had one of those for my local election. It was honestly kind of complicated. I can see someone who wasn't careful failing the last step. If you put it in, you'd have to rip up the envelope to read the instructions. Yes, you can fail this, and it's very complicated, but it's also very, very clearly explained. Like, on that fucking envelope, they explain, like, what envelope to put in what. They're all color-coded, and it's, like, very, very clear. It's like they're explaining it to a 3-year-old. It's just you have to be able to follow these instructions, right? So that's a bit harder than to go into the ballot box, but it's not like, right? I don't know anybody who hasn't been able to do this, and you can get somebody to help as well, or you could just have somebody vote for you if you wanted to. I don't recommend that. The color coding was dodgy for us. They also used weirdly fancy language. Well, they used proper German. Amtsdeutsch, like the German bureaucrat speaks. But if you think that is hard, anything, when I moved to the UK, and I moved to the UK as a professional journalist, so I was writing news stories, right? And I was told by several people, actually that worked there, that I was better than a lot of the actual native speakers there before me. Just like my language was better. But then you get a fucking letter from the British government, and that's just like a different kind of language, like tax German. Oh my God, we had to do taxes when I was in Australia. It's like I couldn't, I speak English very well. I've been doing podcasts in English for like 5 years. I don't understand what they're trying to, like, what does the sentence mean? Yeah, it's bureaucrat speech. I think that's bad everywhere. Astral C says people can't follow IKEA instructions. IKEA instructions are horrible. IKEA instructions have a shit. And there's some people who use like the UX for IKEA instructions for like other things, like nerdy stuff. It's the shittiest UX ever. Like, they literally, like, they put two screws next to each other that look exactly the same in the fucking instruction, and one is like twice as long as the other one if you actually figure it out. Like, that is not a good example. IKEA is fucking horrible. Like, not really. So Lego instruction, yes. Use Kobe. Kobe instructions are excellent. Anyway, let's get to the point here. A lot of people talk to me or ask me who I voted for, and I wrote and before the election I actually wrote a blog article in German on my blog about this. It's linked in the show notes in case you speak German. Private citizen of press. But it's probably worth reiterating. So I voted for a small party. They're called Team Totenhöfer, which is a horrible name. Totenhöfer sounds like a Nazi general. That's actually my voting slip there. Allegedly. I don't think you're allowed to do that for some weird reason. That's Team Totenhöfer sounds like it's an SS Totenkopf Schwadron fucking general. And he's a fucking publicist. He used to be a journalist, and you know how I feel about other journalists. But he founded like this little small party, and it has like really good things I really like in his program. So basically, there's an app which I actually, for research purposes, installed and tried out. It's called Vote Swiper. It's basically Tinder for voting, and it does like the old thing. They ask the parties the same questions, and you answer the questions, and it matches you with the answers from the parties. And they were like, so your top choice with 82% agreeable whatever rate is Team Totenhöfer. And I was like, who the fuck is that? I've never heard of those. What the fuck? And CDU would actually be in the second. So I think I'm officially conservative now. CDU, FDP, yeah. But SPD is kind of the same. So I'm like in the middle between the big parties. Anyway, so this was my biggest match. Usually I don't like these apps. I think they're not very good. But they told me of a new party, and then I did what I always do and what I recommend. Go there, read their party program. They're actually not that long, generally, and very understandable. This party program, you could tell the guy is a fucking journalist because it was it was really well written, like some really good stuff in there. Not only like the points, but also like literally well written. And they had some cool things, like change the period people get elected to for 5 years, and then they can also only be voted for 2 periods of those. They wanted to outlaw all party donations over 5,000 euros. Make the tax law in Germany, which is horrible, easy. A lot easier. Less taxes for like middle, the middle class basically. So me, yes, I need less taxes. Fuck, I get taxed so much. They wanted to get rid of the church tax, which I really like. And they want to get rid of 1/3 of all bureaucracy in Germany. I don't know how they're going to do that, but I thought it was a laudable goal. And they wanted to change. In Germany, you have something called soziale Marktwirtschaft, which is basically social capitalism, for lack of a better term. They wanted to build that into a ecologically social capitalism. I thought that was also a good idea. I didn't really agree with the analysis of the SARS-CoV-2 situation, but you can't get everything. Anyway, just general thing that they're like Europe. They want in foreign policy, they want us to treat Russia like we treat the US, which is something I've said for years. They want to get rid of a lot of the German military, outlaw exports of weapons from Germany, and finally outlaw all deployments of the German army outside of Germany, which is actually what our constitution says, which Schröder argued around pretty much. and we've been doing it ever since. So I think that they had a good idea there. Like they kind of, they emphasized they believe in the German army, but they wanted to be like, like the Japanese, basically the home defense army, which I think is a good idea. And they were very clear that they're against all kinds of like, xenophobia or, like they say racism. And they actually say they actually have written in their party program something I always say, that racism is a term invented by the Nazis, which, that was like a somewhat legitimate scientific theory back then, the whole phrenology bullshit, and, that they're actually races of humans, which is bullshit if you figure out it's scientifically absolutely dumb and idiotic. So we shouldn't use the term racism at all, because it's basically, using a term the Nazis pushed. And there's no races in humans. There's no even, it's like breeds in dogs. It's like scientifically idiotic. So it's, so I really like that. I like the whole program, and it was very important to me. Something that, I mentioned Held der Steine before. He did a very intelligent video, also in German. So I'm not going to link it, but like basically, he said you need to vote like a small party. So like pick some small party that probably has no chance to get into the Bundestag, but like we need to, like basically his point was all these other parties, all the ones I talked about this whole show, the Conservatives, the Labour Party, the Liberals, the Greens, the AfD, all of these guys, the left, they're all shit. And they're proven shit because we've been voting for them for decades. He's about as old as I am. So he goes like, we've been voting for these for decades. They're all shit. Look at Germany. Our fucking infrastructure is broken. We're like, our internet connections are a joke in Europe. Like we're fucked when it comes to like high speed internet. Like this is all Merkel's doing, right? We have under Merkel, like in this blog post, I made the analysis that under Schröder we were leading almost the world in renewable energies. Then Merkel dials that all back. Invests into coal plants and nuclear power plants. That was a big part of their plan. Fukushima happens. Then she's like, we're going to turn off all nukes. And like, it's like this absolutely disastrous energy policy that left Germany basically at the behest of the Russians or the Americans, because we now need natural gas, which you can either get from Putin, which makes sense because he's just over there, or from the Americans, where they have to get fucking tankers over the ocean to get us. Like, but we're beholden to somebody, which is a horrible policy. They said, like this party I voted for specifically said they think that climate change exists and that we should do something against it. But they said that, for example, electronic vehicles are totally idiotic, and they're just like a solution for rich people to feel good. And to have like I'm doing good, I'm a good person, like your virtue signaling basically, which is something I totally agree with as well. So yeah, I think my idea was just vote none of these idiots that are proven idiots, and vote somebody else. And this party obviously didn't go to the Bundestag, but I think they got enough votes to get some advertising. You basically, if you get a certain threshold of votes, you get money from the state to run your party and to advertise next time. Strengthen the right to repair instead of replace, the super user. Yes, that's one of my big focuses as well. Like, people go like, oh, you're driving a 20-year-old car. That is bad for the planet. No, it fucking isn't. You buying a new electronic, like you bought like a fucking hybrid, and now you're buying a full electronic. You're buying cars every 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. That's fucking bad. That's idiotic, right? I have stuff that works, and I'm gonna repair it. I've got this fucking iPhone that. Oh. Shit! I just spilled some tea. Oh no! On my notes! Bear with me while I clean this up. I was being agitated. I was like, fuck this fucking iPhone. Man. Don't. Okay. It's all on the floor. I'm going to clean this up after the show. Okay. Where were we? This fucking iPhone. I was like, this iPhone, and was pulling it out, and it was on a string. like on a, it's charging because its battery is fucked, but I'm gonna have that repaired. That was my point. And then that pulled over my mug, and that spilled everything. I have this iPhone, breaks iPhone. Yeah, pretty much. I'm just gonna have to clean up this desk because it's gonna ruin the varnish. But then I'm gonna finish the show quickly. I'm not gonna edit this. This is what it is. It is what it is. This is me, live and in color. Yeah, so, repair things. It's very important. It's good. That's the policy. Get the sock, says. Oh, you remember the sock. The beer sock. I actually have tissues right now, so that's good. A super user actually asked, get rid of the church tax, as in not tax churches anymore. No. In Germany, if you part of because the government knows where they have all this data about, yes, it's always been the same, right? They know what religion you are. And by default, you actually pay a tax. The government collects, with all the other taxes, collects taxes. And if you're Catholic, it goes to the Catholic Church. And he's like, that's really unfair. Like, why do we, they were saying, I'm actually against religion, but this party was saying, we're not against religion, but why do we do this for the Catholics and the Protestants and not for the Muslims or the Jews or, I don't know, the Scientology people or Rastafarians or fucking Dudism? Why? This is really unfair. And I think, yeah, true. Fucking churches, if they want money, they can get their money however they want. Anyway, if you speak German, I've linked this blog post. I go into it a little bit more. And there's also the video I just saw is also linked there from Held der Steine, which is worth watching if you speak German. But anyway, that's it for me for this topic. No, there's one point I just realized before we wrap this up. Answering the question, what will happen if the coalition talks fail? If that happens, actually, they went interesting this time because they started off with the Greens and the FDP, which generally don't have a lot in common, talking to each other first. They were like, we're going to talk to each other, and then we talk to the CDU and the SPD, which was very smart because that way they're like, okay, we're the kingmaker, right? We can figure out what we have in common, and then we can actually, because otherwise they would always be the weaker party in the coalition. And so together they're kind of they're pooling resources, they're pooling their seats. So I thought that was kind of cool, kind of good move by them. I don't know. We'll see. If no government can be formed, which is, I think, has never happened in the history of the Federal Republic, then we will have a re-election. So what happens is Merkel and her cabinet stays in power until somebody, Armin Laschet probably, or it's probably going to be, why have I forgotten his name? My fucking former mayor. God, I put it down here somewhere, didn't I? Olaf Scholz, probably Olaf Scholz or Armin Laschet will be, say, okay, I'm going to be chancellor. I have this coalition government. And then that needs to be ratified by our Bundespräsident, who is our actual head of state, who is largely representative, but one of his things is the chancellor goes to him and says, this is the government, and then he just ratifies that, and then that's the new government. And if that doesn't happen, if the talks stall and everybody says we can't work this out, then we don't have, then we'll have new elections, which is going to be unprecedented. I don't think that's going to happen. So I would think it's going to be traffic light. I think Scholz is by far the more confident of the two possible chancellors. I think Laschet, because he lost, the CDU lost that many votes, and it was largely put on his shoulders because he was in Northern. He's the president of state of Northern Australia right now, which is my federal state, and everybody said he mishandled the coronavirus pandemic situation. I don't know how he did that. I don't think it went worse in Northern Australia. Obviously, we had the first outbreak here, but like we're like one of the biggest federal states, and we're by far the most populous. We have like the Ruhr area, which is like this huge metropolitan area, which is basically equivalent of LA for German standards, and it's just not comparable to other federal states, right? And so it's like I don't think actually he did something. He really did something wrong, but he had that image. So I think Scholz is much more likely. I think this coalition, I mean, both of these coalitions are they're untested and relatively shaky, I would say. But, I think that's a good thing. Maybe they're not going to last, right? That's the thing that could happen. I definitely think we'll have a government. I don't think there's going to be a revote. But, it could be that we have a government that just falls apart after a year or even like a few months. Whether like we can't make, and then we vote again. Actually, I think technically then the other people could go and try to form a government. But that also never really, I don't think that has happened before. So we don't know. But I'll keep you informed. I'll let you know. I'll do more about this as it comes up. And that's it for this topic. Let's get into the feedback because I've been offline quite a lot, so I have quite a lot of feedback to go through. And that was kind of a pump fake. He laughed during the flood, says terrestrial Jim. His son did shady deals during the pandemic. Yeah, but first of all, he's a CDU politician, so they all do. No, everybody does shit. Like, the flood is another thing where, like, he mishandled that. Like, what the fuck? It was, like, water coming from the sky running to, it's like he is not very good at giving the impression that he's doing the right thing, right? So famously, Helmut Schmidt, in the flood in Hamburg, which was a lot less dangerous because a lot less people died, but it was huge back then. It's debatable how much he actually did, but he used that, he put himself in the right light. Same with Schröder when there was a flood in the east, and you can do it the right way and you can do it the wrong way. It's not a German thing either. George W. Bush, was it with Katrina? You can just go there and handle it the wrong way. And Laschet is just he's like his name sounds. Lasch in German means kind of. What does that actually? How do you translate that? What does that actually mean? Let's look it up. Lackadaisical, basically, and his name's Laschet, so he sounds like he's like Johnny Lackadaisical, and so he. They're both politicians. I just think Scholz is a much more smarter and tough guy, and he knows what he's doing, and he has a lot more experience, as a mayor in Hamburg and as a minister and as the vice chancellor. He gives the impression to know what he's doing, right? I don't know. So with the floods, I don't think it really was if anybody's at fault, the fucking local politicians who in the places where they if you look at it, it's not surprising that at some point there was going to be a flood there, and they had the data and they just didn't do anything about it. So they're the fucking idiots who failed people. But it's all water under the bridge. I just think he's less likely to do this. But anyway, let's get into the feedback. That's why we're here. Actually, I was kind of doing a pump fake because I'm actually going to do two pieces of feedback. I just want to keep this show short. Also, I had a very long day, as you can tell and a very strenuous day, as you can tell by me spilling everything all over the place. Yes. So I wanted to keep this short a little bit. So I'm going to have two pieces of feedback. I got a lot more. Over the break, I put that in a safe place, and we're gonna get to it. Again, I'm gonna try to do some extra episodes here if I can, and then I'll be happy to have some feedback. if I do a surprise episode, there's usually no feedback for that, obviously. So first of all, let's get to Fadi Mansour, longtime supporter of the show, producer, who says, "Dear Fab, dear Mike, first of all," so this is referring to the episode with Mike that I did, which was, God, I did so many episodes before. Well, not so many, but I did several episodes before I left. I can't keep them apart. The Sausage Wars, episode 86. Dear Fab, dear Mike, first of all, Army of Geese, honk. Yeah, thanks for listening to the whole episode there, Fadi. Thank you for the long episode. Thank you both for the interesting discussion. Also, a happy birthday to your grandma, Fab. Yeah, my grandma, Fab. Your grandma, Fab. Yes, my grandma turned 100 recently, which I'm very proud of. She's an amazing person. Wrote a blog post about that. Link in the show notes. Nice picture of her on her motorbike in her 20s. And then the picture of her where I had Marina Amaral, who is a very good colorist. She does like historic research and then colors all black and white photos, like colorizes them. And I had her do that. Yes, so my grandma is amazing. Anyway, I can't comment on the EU. I'm still trying to take a position on this. On one hand, I'm generally against big government, but at the same time, I also get that there are a lot of benefits of having a common market. Let's hope that the end result would be to benefit the people, not the politicos, says Fadi. Yeah, I guess, I guess you agree. I'm also in two minds, as you probably heard in that episode. I mean, you could have, and this is also something the AfD kind of wants, so I don't know how I feel about that, but like there is the theory, is the idea that you could have the EU go back to just being an economic union. I don't know how I feel about it, as you can tell from that discussion with Mike. I'm also in two minds about that. Anyway, Fadi goes on, jumping to episode 87, and regarding Fab's conspiracy theory about Afghanistan, I also read a JC Dvorak's newsletter, and I have to agree, it's the only explanation that makes some kind of sense. Later on, there was a discussion about advertisements and sites, so news websites. From my point of view, sites need an income, and at the moment, selling customer data and analytics seems the only source of value that they can get from their non-paying users. So in order to replace advertisements as a source of income, there should be an alternative. I feel that something related to cryptocurrencies and mining might be a good candidate for that. We'll see. Thanks for your feedback, Fadi. As always, a pleasure. Yeah, I don't know about that. I think maybe as technologists, we think too technological at times. I think the solution is just that people need to pay for news, which is not that crazy an idea. People have been doing that for hundreds of years, right? That's what newspapers used to be. That, before there were newspapers before advertising. You just pay for the fucking newspaper. Maybe the publishers need to take less of a cut. Maybe we need to get rid of publishers, as I also said in the past. I don't know. I just feel like the solution is people paying for news. There's this thing people always say was like, if you want quality, you have to pay for something. Maybe that's the same with journalism. Anyway, I also got a message from Cam, which I found interesting. I think this was more meant, I don't know if they meant it to be public, but I don't see anything why I shouldn't, talk about this, because I think it's very interesting and it brings up a possible future topic. So Cam says, to have a bit more privacy, I started using simplelogin.com. So this is about supporting the show, to give Patreon a unique email, and I use privacy.com to give Patreon a unique credit card. This should prevent them from collating my payments and building a profile. We talked about, that kind of stuff on the show before. I stopped using PayPal because they partnered with the Anti-Defamation League to prevent hate groups. Yeah, that is a good point, actually. Might not solve all the problems, but should help a little. So I have probably heard of privacy.com before. Can't remember, but I should have, and I should talk about this. This is like a thing where you can have, I think you can give them your credit card number, like your credit card, and then they have like special, like credit cards, virtual credit cards, right, that you can use that are valid credit card numbers and whatever, and to the vendor it looks like you are paying with a normal credit card, but they can't track them because you can give everyone their own credit card. So I'll have to look into this. Obviously, they can probably track your purchases because they have your actual credit card number, but maybe they can't. I'll have to look into this. I think it's a good thing. It's a good pointer. I think we should look into this for a future topic. Also, if it makes, this is a privacy conscious show, and I always talk about how, it's important for you to support it. If I can make that more privacy friendly, obviously I will try to do that. So I think that's a good thing. Superuser says, Superuser today with all the information. They're a service that masks your phone number and card number. They also have breach reporting for sensitive info like emails, card, and phone numbers. But US only. Well, it won't help me. I know them from native advertising on podcasts. Ooh, not a friend of native advertising. But, it doesn't help me if they're US only, but it would help people in the US. So I'm going to look at that. I think it's a good topic. So just be wary. Maybe it's like the VPN industry, which also advertises for influencers. Oh, yes. Oh, my God. I wrote a blog post about this recently because of like some email spam I got from a VPN provider. That really pissed me off. But that's neither here nor there. I think this is interesting, and I put it on the list of stuff to talk about for the future. And as I said, I'm wrapping up with that feedback. I got more feedback, so if you wrote me, don't worry. I got your email. And the thing is, if I don't answer you, chances are I'm keeping it to talk about it on the show because I can just like double the effort, right? If I talk about it on the show, I'm thinking like you'll listen to it. So just, if you don't hear from me, it's probably going to come up in the show in the future. Please link it. I'm sick to fucking death of VPN ads. Okay, there's another link I'll have to put in the show notes. But I'll give it to you in Twitch chat as well. Well, because you gave me so much information. I'm just going to my blog and scrolling through all the shit I wrote. There's a picture of Bismarck, obviously. It's a blog story. It's on fab.industries, which is my blog. It's called The Latest in Sleazy SEO Scams. Sorry. SEO scams are something very different. SEO scams. Basically, somebody... a PR company who's been hired, I guess, by a VPN provider, and they're pretending to be a student. And my website is actually well written. I actually nearly fell for it until I saw like the sender email address. But anyway, more on that in that blog post. All the links will be on privatecitizen.press. And with that, I'm gonna have to talk a little bit more about supporting the show. Can support the show by going to privatecitizen.press and click on contact in the very top, which brings you to a page that summarizes contact information, this is important because I need feedback. I need you to disagree with me if you disagree with me, and I think that's content for the show. Also, if you don't want it to be on the show, you can say so, and I will honor that. But please also give me things you want me to talk about because I have topics. That's not the problem. And I don't need to outsource. Like, the list of topics for the show is like, if I do 4 shows a month, I have half a year of topics easily. But, I also if producers, listeners give me topics, I will move them ahead in the line because I think, I want to do the stuff you find interesting. But if that's too tedious and you just want to give me money, I'm not going to be opposed to that. So you can, as Cam does, you can become a patron on Patreon, which is kind of cool for me because it is a subscription thing. It can be like $1 a month, but it helps. It helps keep the show on the air and helps me put food on the table and justify that I spent hours and hours and hours a week doing this. Or you can use PayPal if you don't, of course, that anti-defamation league censorship bullshit is not good. But if you want to use PayPal, you can do so. Producers at fab.industries. It's just like the easiest way. It works for most people. If you want to have a one-off support payment for the show, you can do that. This is the value for value model. It's pioneered by the No Agenda show, which means that you get this for free. And then you're like, maybe I get some value from it. Let me give some value back. But you don't have to. But, I think paying for stuff generally would make the world a lot better if we all started doing this. And I try to do this. I try to, for years now, try to support other creators with, let's face it, I don't have that much money. I'm a journalist. I'm not doing this job to get rich. It's the wrong job for that. If I wanted money, I would have crossed over to the evil side and be doing PR, right? I would be one of those fuckers writing these scammy fucking emails. But I can't. I could there's this thing where people say I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I probably could do that because, let's face it, I'm damn good looking. No. But I just my spleen would dissolve or something. I think I would get tumors in my stomach. I don't want to do that shit. Anyway, there are people who are actively working to keep me from that dark side and that spleen bursting future of mine, and who support this show, and I am therefore very thankful to those. So I would like to shout them all out. So thanks to Georges, Steve Hose, Butterbeans, Jonathan M. Heathy, Michael Mullen Jensen, Dave, Michael Small, 1i11g, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Jackie Plage, Philipp Klostermann, IKN, Bennett Piata, Kai Sears, Tobias, Fadi Mansour, Rodane the Insane, Joe Poser, Dirk Didi, Mod7, Sandman 616, David Potter, Mika, Rizal, Martin, Avis, Mr. Amish, Dave Amrish, Drive Zero, Ricky M. Cam, Barry Williams, Jonathan, Captain Eckert, RJ Tracy, Rick Bragg, D, Robert Forster, Superuser No Reply, and Astral C, who was also in chat today. I thank all of you very much, and Superuser, of course, with lots of information. I thank you. Thank you for keeping the show on the air and supporting this episode. Also, I would like to thank my Twitch subscribers because I'm streaming this obviously on Twitch. I didn't stream a few episodes there because I was kind of trying to get them out before I had to get on the plane to Spain. Plane to Spain to get to the Chiringuito. Love that. Chiringuito is such a good... the whole concept is amazing. Fuck, I miss the Chiringuito. I miss that fucking beach. The sun, man. The fucking, it was so good. The palms. We went to Elche, which is a town next to Alicante, which has the biggest, it's the Palmaral, it's the biggest palm garden. I love palm trees. I love palm trees so much. I actually literally have a tattoo of a palm tree on my left shoulder. And they have this huge palm tree garden. It was amazing. Anyway, where was I? Twitch subscribers, thank you because you're supporting the show. And yes, you can do that with Amazon Prime. Then it's kind of free to you because you get one subscription free with Prime, but you have to do it every month. But thanks to you, my Twitch subscribers, you're doing it. You're supporting the show as well. Those people are Mike the Dane, Jonathan MH_com, IndieGamiacs, Halifa, Sandman616, Centurio Purchase, Bacon the Pork, Mod7's unavailable, El Terrestrius Jim is also in Twitch chat today, and Galtaran. You have a mini palm tree behind you too, says Superior, because, streaming this on Twitch video, that's a banana plant, which, yes, I love it because it looks like a palm tree, a little bit, technically not a palm tree. Fucking palm trees wouldn't grow here, but I love just, it makes me happy. It makes me happy. I see a palm tree and I'm like, Chiringuito, it's the sun. Just give me a beer. Just let me lie down with my Cobra in the sand, naked, cracking open a stubby. So good. Anyway, I need to thank Bindmark as well at bindmark.co.uk. They are providing me, and have been doing this for years, with the servers to serve you the audio files for the podcast. So they're a UK cloud hosting company. They're amazing. I love them. Isn't it counted as a giant weed? It's a Staude in German. What is that? Staude. Plants are weird. Categorization is a forb. Shrub. I don't know. No idea. I know that palm trees are technically not trees because they don't work like a tree at all. They're just like this plant that keeps growing up and builds like this trunk. They're not technically. Just look it up. But palms are amazing. Palms are they're just beautiful. I'm watching a lot of Miami Vice right now as well. It also makes me happy. It's just like palm trees. I'm like, nice. Anyway, I need to wrap this up. I'm going to be back with regular releases now. That's the plan. And, thanks to Raul Cabezali, who's probably also from Spain. I have no fucking idea. He recorded and wrote and whatever the song I'm using, Acoustic Roots. That's the theme song. It's very traditional Spanish guitar. And, the name Raul, as Dr. Disrespect would say. Raul! Maybe he's Portuguese. I don't know. Raul Cabezali, thank you for this song. It's fucking amazing. Anyway, I'm going to play us out with a different song because I've been doing that because Epidemic Sound, and I've licensed some music. They're not these fuckers who go around DMCAing people. You can actually fucking license their music and use it in a podcast, which is the future. Just pay a little bit of money, get some music that you can actually use. So I'm going to play us out with a song called Tightrope by Van Syke. And I thought this was very apt to the to the coalition, like the building that's going on right now, like the building of a German government. I thought this song epitomizes that. So I'll see you soon, probably next Wednesday. I probably won't get a show out before that, but I'm going to try to do some extra shows. Anyway, see you around. Have a good one. Aim to misbehave. Plant a palm tree, even though it's not technically a tree. Today, a lot of things go wrong. This totally peaked. I'm going to have to fix that in post. I have to replay that. Anyway, let's stop this recording. Yeah, I'm gonna rate somebody in a bit. Will you be getting Battlefield 2042? You think? No, I don't. I've never been a Battlefield guy. Just not my. It's not my jam. I'm currently enjoying Deathloop very much, but I won't be streaming it because it maxes out my graphics card like you wouldn't believe. I can't stream that. Like I can barely play that game without my computer burning down. But it's a great game. But I will be streaming on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I will be streaming Icarus, survival game. It's coming out in November. That I'm reviewing, and they have another beta weekend. They had a few, but I'm gonna join that and play that. So if you're interested in that, you can come along on the weekend and watch that. And I was gonna rate General Sam because I think he was just recording a podcast on Battlefield 2042, but I think it looks like he was like on a break or whatever. I think that is like a pre-recorded thing that he does. I think they're just finished. That looked very much like they're finished. So I'm gonna rate Papa Pest, good old Pestley, who is playing Escape from Tarkov as he's wont to be. Thanks for watching this. Oh yeah, I will be writing about Deathloop. I can't stream it really, obviously, but I will be writing about it. I mean, I'm way too late because I was gone. I couldn't review it for anybody. I'm just gonna write a review on my blog, I think. Or probably from a newsletter, which will then later get posted to the blog. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, maybe see you on the weekend for some Icarus. I won't be this dressed up probably. I'll probably be like in my pajamas. Yeah, and the wife. Well, she'll be gone on Saturday, but she'll be back. She's currently still in Spain. Doing important stuff. Sorry, by the way, super user, I'm gonna refund you that channel point thing in a second. Obviously, that was turned off during the podcast. I know you want to mess with me during the podcast, but I don't. We did that, and I was listening to it back, and I don't think it really works. Anyway, let's rate Pestley, who just got killed by somebody else, which is, killing Pestley is good going if you're not a cheater. Anyways, see you soon. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it a lot, and have a good one. I'm gonna spend some time cleaning this up now. You don't want to see what this floor looks like. I'm gonna take my tie off and get down and jiggy with it. Get down and dirty. Thanks for watching. See you soon.